Quantum pathways. The Phantom slipped through the void like a shadow across water, its phase shift technology rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside the cockpit, Juno monitored the experimental drive systems with the focused intensity of a creator watching her greatest work perform. Any signs of pursuit? Tristan asked, checking the tactical displays. His security training wouldn't allow him to relax until they were well clear of Helios. Nothing definitive, Juno replied, her augmented eyes cycling through spectrum analyses. Though there's some unusual quantum disturbance in our wake. Could be sensor ghosts from the phase shift drive? Or something else. In the cabin behind them, Dr. Reeves tended to Nyx, whose condition had stabilized but remained far from optimal. The Stellari woman sat with the artifact, the resonance key, cradled in her hands, her eyes half closed as she communed with it in some silent fashion. Tristan turned in his seat to observe them. How is she? Physically improving, Leora reported, checking her medical scanner. But there's neural activity I can't explain. The connection between her and that object seems to be more than just technological. Nyx opened her eyes, fixing Tristan with that star-filled gaze that seemed to see through him. The key exists in multiple states simultaneously, she explained. Physical, quantum, perhaps even spiritual. The architects designed their technology to interface directly with consciousness. That sounds. Tristan searched for the word. Dangerous, Leora finished. Interfacing consciousness with unknown technology could have unpredictable effects on neural pathways. Nyx smiled faintly. Your concern is appreciated, Doctor, but my people have worked with architect relics for centuries. The risk is minimal, for a Stellari. Her emphasis wasn't lost on Tristan. You're worried about human interaction with the key. The architects designed their legacy to respond to all sentient life, but with varying degrees of integration. Nyx's gaze dropped to the pulsing artifact. Yet I've never seen a key respond to anyone as it does to you, Commander. Before Tristan could respond, the ship's sensors chimed in alert. Juno's hands flew across the controls, her expression tightening. Quantum wake signatures, she announced. 3 vessels, using some kind of drive that's leaving ripples in subspace. They're tracking us despite the phase shift. Shadowers, Nyx confirmed grimly. Their vessels incorporate salvaged architect technology. Cruder than this ship, but effective. Tristan slipped back into tactical mode. Options. Juno's augmented eyes narrowed. We push the Phantom harder. The drive has theoretical limits I haven't tested yet. Theoretical being the operative word, Leora cautioned. The first archive is our safest option, Nyx said, rising from her seat with careful movements. She approached the cockpit, the key floating just above her palm. May I? Juno hesitated, then nodded. My ship is your ship, apparently. It seems to like you both. Nyx placed the key on the navigation console. Immediately, the ship's displays flickered, and new information cascaded across the screens, coordinates, navigational paths, spatial anomalies. The archive exists in a dimensional pocket, Nyx explained. A space hidden within normal space. The key knows the way. A pocket dimension? Juno's expression shifted from skepticism to fascination. That's theoretically possible, but would require energy levels beyond anything we can generate. The architects found ways to weave reality itself, Nyx replied. Their understanding of cosmic principles surpassed even my people's knowledge at our height. The key pulsed brighter, and to everyone's surprise, the ship responded with harmonizing hums throughout its systems. The navigation display zoomed in on a seemingly empty region of space ahead. There's nothing there, Tristan observed. To conventional sensors, no. Nyx's fingers traced patterns in the air above the key. But to those who know how to look, the space before them shimmered, reality itself appearing to fold and unfold like origami in the hands of a master. The effect was both beautiful and unsettling, a glimpse into dimensions that human eyes weren't meant to process. By the void, Juno whispered, her augmented vision capturing data that her mind could barely comprehend. It's a spatial harmonic fold. The mathematics are perfect. Set course directly for the fold, Nyx instructed. The key will guide us through. Juno hesitated. If those calculations are wrong by even a fraction, we'll be scattered across multiple dimensional planes. The choice is yours, Nyx said quietly. Trust in the architect's design, or face the shadowers with conventional weapons. The tactical displays confirmed what they already knew. The pursuing vessels were closing the gap, their exotic drives capable of tracking the Phantom's quantum signature. Tristan made the decision. "Take us in, Juno." As the engineer plotted the course, Tristan noticed Nyx swaying slightly. Without thinking, he rose and steadied her with a hand at her elbow. The contact sent an unexpected current through him, not unpleasant, but startling in its intensity. Nyx looked up at him, surprise evident in her expression. "You felt that?" It wasn't a question. "What is it?" "The key," she said softly. "It's creating a resonance between us. A harmonic connection." Leora's medical scanner beeped insistently. "Your neural patterns are synchronizing," she reported, her professional composure cracking slightly. "That shouldn't be possible across different species." "And yet it is happening," Nyx replied, making no move to break contact with Tristan. The architects believed in connections that transcended biological differences. The moment stretched between them, charged with implications neither fully understood. Tristan found himself lost in her cosmic eyes, aware of a growing sense that their meeting hadn't been chance, that larger forces were at work. Approaching the fold, Juno announced, breaking the spell. "Brace for transition." Reluctantly, Tristan helped Nyx to a seat and secured himself in the co-pilot's chair. The view ahead showed only empty space, but the ship's enhanced sensors revealed complex patterns of energy that shouldn't exist, reality itself parting like a curtain. "Phase shift drive at maximum," Juno reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Matching harmonic frequencies with the fold aperture." The key pulsed with increasing brightness, casting prismatic patterns across the cockpit. The ship vibrated around them, not with mechanical strain but with a musical resonance that seemed to affect their very molecules. Transition in 3, 2, 1. Reality shattered. For a moment that stretched beyond time, Tristan experienced existence from outside himself, his consciousness expanding beyond the confines of his body, beyond the ship, beyond conventional dimensions. He glimpsed patterns in the fabric of the universe that human language had no words to describe. And through it all, he felt Nyx's presence like a companion star, her consciousness brushing against his in the infinite void. Then, with a sensation like a bubble bursting, normal space reasserted itself. The Phantom emerged into a region unlike any Tristan had ever seen. Before them floated what appeared to be a small planetoid, but it defied conventional planetary formation. Its surface was a perfect geometric arrangement of crystalline structures that captured the light of an ancient star and refracted it in mesmerizing patterns. The space around it shimmered with energy fields that formed intricate, ever-changing mandalas against the backdrop of space. "The first archive," Nyx breathed, her voice filled with wonder. "One of the original repositories of architect knowledge." "It's beautiful," Leora whispered. "Impossible," Juno countered, though her tone held more awe than skepticism. "Those structures should collapse under their own mass. The gravitational equations don't allow for." "Your equations are limited by your understanding of physics," Nyx said gently. "The architects operated beyond such constraints." Tristan checked the tactical display. "Did we lose our pursuit?" "For now," Juno confirmed. "The fold sealed behind us, though if they have access to similar keys, they'll find another way in," Nyx finished. "The Shadowers are persistent, but we have time." As they approached the crystalline planetoid, new displays activated across the Phantom's systems, docking protocols, atmospheric readings, gravitational adjustments. The ship was interfacing with the archive automatically. "It recognizes the vessel," Nyx explained. "The Phantom's technology incorporated enough architect principles to be acknowledged as compatible." "Lucky us," Juno muttered, though her augmented eyes gleamed with excitement at each new data stream. "It's guiding us to a docking point." The Phantom glided toward a structure that resembled a massive crystal flower, its petals unfurling to reveal a docking bay that emitted a soft golden light. As they drew closer, new information flooded the ship's databases: atmospheric composition, gravitational settings, safety protocols. "It's creating a compatible environment for us," Leora noted with professional appreciation, adjusting atmospheric mix and gravity to human and stellari norms. The ship settled gently into the crystalline dock, the petals closing around them in what felt strangely like an embrace. Systems throughout the vessel powered down automatically, except for life support and basic functions. "Power conservation mode," Juno observed. It's taking control of non-essential systems. Not control, Nix corrected. Communion. The ship and the archive are exchanging information. The key floated from the console, drifting toward the airlock as if eager to continue its journey. Nix rose to follow it, but Tristan placed a restraining hand on her arm. We need a plan first, he said. We don't know what's waiting for us out there. The archives were designed as sanctuaries and libraries, Nix assured him. There are no weapons or defenses against those, the key admits. I prefer certainty to ancient promises, Tristan replied. We proceed with caution. Nix smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her otherworldly features. Your protective instincts do you credit, Commander. But in this case, they're unnecessary. The archive has awaited worthy visitors for millennia. It will not harm those it has invited. I'm still bringing this, Tristan said, checking the charge on his sidearm. Call me traditionally cautious. I'll remain with the ship, Juno decided. Someone should monitor our systems during this communion, and be ready for a quick departure if needed. I'm coming with you, Leora told Nix. Your condition is still not fully stable, and I want readings on whatever environment we're walking into. With their roles decided, they prepared to disembark. The airlock cycled automatically as they approached, revealing a crystalline corridor beyond that seemed to extend into the heart of the structure. The air that flowed and carried a scent like ozone after a lightning storm, clean and somehow energizing. The archive is fully automated, Nix explained as they stepped into the corridor. Self-sustaining for tens of thousands of years. And now, awakening at our arrival. As if responding to her words, the crystalline surfaces around them began to glow with soft light that followed their progress. The key floated ahead, seeming to guide them deeper into the structure. Tristan walked beside Nix, alert for any sign of danger despite her assurances. You said the archive contains knowledge. What kind exactly? Historical records of the architects, their evolution, their discoveries, their eventual transcendence, Nix replied. But more importantly, guidance for those species they believed might one day follow their path. And the Shadows want this knowledge for themselves, Leora said. To establish dominance. They misunderstand its purpose, Nix said with sadness in her voice. The architects didn't leave weapons behind, but understanding. The power they achieved came from cooperation, from unity of purpose across different species. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that defied the apparent size of the structure viewed from outside. The ceiling soared hundreds of meters overhead, comprised of interlocking crystal formations that captured and refracted light in complex patterns. The floor beneath their feet was a seamless surface that seemed solid, yet somehow fluid, responding to their steps with ripples of light. But what drew their attention was the central feature, a massive crystalline pillar that pulsed with inner light, surrounded by floating geometric shapes that slowly rotated around it in a complex orbital dance. The repository, Nix whispered, her voice filled with reverence. The key accelerated toward the central pillar, its pulsing light synchronizing with the larger structure. As it approached, the geometric shapes rearranged themselves, forming a pathway. It's activating, Nix said, quickening her pace. Tristan stayed close to her side, noting that Leora had fallen behind, her medical scanner forgotten in her hand as she stared open-mouthed at the impossible architecture. When they reached the central pillar, the key hovered between Nix and the crystalline surface. She turned to Tristan, her expression suddenly vulnerable. The archive will respond more completely to a shared connection, she said softly. If you're willing. Tristan hesitated. What does that entail exactly? Physical contact, she explained. Between us and with the key. The resonance we experienced earlier, it would be amplified, allowing the archive to recognize our combined potential. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of how rapidly their connection had developed, of the implications of allowing it to deepen further. Yet Tristan found himself nodding, drawn by both scientific curiosity and something more personal that he wasn't ready to name. Nix extended her hand, and he took it without further hesitation. Her skin was warmer than a human's, with a subtle texture like finest silk. The connection sent that now familiar current through him, stronger than before. With her other hand, Nix reached for the floating key. Together, she said. As their joined hands touched the artifact, the world dissolved around them. Tristan's consciousness expanded exponentially, no longer confined to his physical form. He perceived the archive as a vast network of information and energy, flowing in patterns that transcended conventional data storage. Beside him, around him, through him, He felt Nyx's presence, her mind intertwined with his in a union both intimate and profoundly alien. Welcome, came a thought that belonged to neither of them. The archive itself was addressing them, its consciousness so vast and ancient that it made them feel like children. Impressions followed, approval, curiosity, a sense of long waiting now ended. You have come at the convergence point, the thought continued. The moment of possibility. Images flooded their shared consciousness, civilizations rising and falling across the galaxy, species evolving, discovering, creating. And through it all, subtle guidance from the architects, nudging development along preferred paths. Humanity's history unfolded before them, not just recorded events, but the hidden influences that had shaped their evolution. The Stellaris' parallel journey appeared alongside, two species developing along different but complementary paths. Designed convergence, came the explanation. Complementary strengths. Compatible consciousness. Understanding dawned on them simultaneously. The architects had influenced the evolution of multiple species across the galaxy, creating diverse but compatible sentient beings intended to eventually unite their strengths. More images followed. A massive vessel of impossible design, suspended in a spatial pocket between dimensions. The architect's cradle, containing the sum of their knowledge and the tools for the next stage of evolution. The Shadowers' approach came a warning pulse. Their understanding is incomplete. Their purpose, divergent. The vision shifted to show the pursuing vessels, 3 Stellari ships of advanced design, their hulls incorporating salvaged architect technology. They were attempting to force open a passage into the dimensional pocket, their methods crude but persistent. Time grows short, the archive communicated. The path forward requires union. The keys must be gathered. The worthy must be tested. With a suddenness that left them disoriented, Tristan and Nyx found themselves back in their bodies, still holding hands before the crystalline pillar. The key floated between them, pulsing with new patterns of light and information. Did you? Tristan began, his voice hoarse. Yes, Nyx whispered, her eyes wide. All of it. They became aware that they were still holding hands, the connection between them charged with new significance after what they'd experienced. Neither moved to break contact. The architects, Tristan said, struggling to process the vastness of what he'd learned. They've been guiding our evolution. All of us. Not controlling, Nyx corrected gently. Nurturing potential. Creating conditions for diverse species to eventually find each other. To recognize our complementary natures. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not evolved in isolation but as part of a grand design spanning millions of years and countless worlds. The cradle, Tristan continued. It's real, and the Shadowers are trying to reach it. If they succeed without understanding its true purpose. Nyx left the thought unfinished, but Tristan had seen the potential consequences in their shared vision. Power wielded without wisdom. Evolution forced down destructive paths. We need to find the other keys, he said with newfound resolve. Before they do. The key between them pulsed in what felt like agreement, its inner light resolving into a map, a pathway to another archive, another key. Leora approached cautiously, having witnessed their trance-like state. What happened? You both just froze for nearly 10 minutes. Before either could respond, an alarm sounded from the communication device at Tristan's belt. Commander, came Juno's urgent voice. We've got company. A Shadower vessel just forced its way through the dimensional fold. They'll reach the archive in minutes. The peaceful atmosphere of the chamber shattered. They needed to move to secure the knowledge they gained and continue their journey before the Shadowers could stop them. But as Tristan turned to leave, he found himself unable to release Nyx's hand. The connection between them had transformed into something profound, a bond forged in shared consciousness that neither fully understood but both recognized as essential to what lay ahead. Her cosmic eyes met his, and in them he saw his own realization mirrored. Their meeting had not been chance but destiny, part of a design set in motion eons before either of their species had achieved sentience. Together, she said softly, echoing her words from moments before. Tristan nodded, feeling the truth of it in his very cells. Together, the key floated before them, its light steady and certain as it guided them back toward the phantom, and toward a future neither could have imagined days before, but which now seemed inevitable as the stars themselves. Trials of truth. The phantom streaked through the dimensional fold, riding waves of quantum distortion, as Juno pushed the experimental vessel to its limits. Behind them, the first archive diminished into a shimmering point of light before vanishing entirely as the fold sealed itself. Did we lose them? Tristan asked, his hand steady on the tactical controls despite the lingering disorientation from his experience in the archive. Juno's augmented eyes cycled through multiple scanning frequencies. Temporarily, the shadow of vessel was still within the pocket dimension when we exited. But they have the coordinates for our next destination. She glanced back at Nyx. Courtesy of the same archive data we accessed. Nyx stood behind them, one hand resting on the crystal housing that contained the resonance key. Since their shared communion with the archive's consciousness, the artifact had transformed, its internal structure rearranging into new configurations. Now it projected a constant holographic display of their route toward the second key. The trials await us at the Nexus Spire, she said, studying the projected path. The archive showed us only glimpses of what we'll face there. Dr. Reeves looked up from her medical scanner, concern evident in her expression. Your neural patterns still haven't stabilized from the archive interface. Both of you need rest before attempting another connection with architect technology. Tristan felt the exhaustion she mentioned, a bone-deep weariness combined with mental fatigue from processing the vast influx of information. Yet beneath it ran a current of energy, a sense of purpose that kept him alert. How long to the Nexus Spire? He asked. Approximately 15 hours at maximum sustainable drive output, Juno replied. I could push it further, but we might need that reserve capability if we encounter trouble. Then we rest in shifts, Tristan decided. Juno, set course and then get some sleep. I'll take first watch. I should examine the data we retrieved first. She protested half-heartedly, though her fatigue was evident in the slight droop of her usually alert posture. The data will still be there after you've slept, Leora said firmly. Doctor's orders. As Juno reluctantly relinquished the controls to automated systems and followed Leora to the crew quarters, Tristan found himself alone with Nyx in the cockpit. The silence between them felt charged with unspoken significance after their shared experience. You should rest as well, he said finally. Dr. Reeves is right about the neural strain. Nyx moved to the co-pilot's seat, her movements graceful despite her recent injuries. My physiology processes such experiences differently than yours. I require contemplation more than sleep. Contemplation? Tristan raised an eyebrow. A meditative state that allows my consciousness to integrate new information patterns. She studied him with those cosmic eyes that seemed to see into his core. What we experienced in the archive, it changed you. It wasn't a question, but Tristan nodded anyway. It's like seeing the universe through new eyes. Understanding connections I never knew existed. He hesitated, then added, understanding our connection. The words hung between them, acknowledging what both had felt, but neither had fully articulated. The resonance between them had transcended physical attraction or intellectual compatibility. It was as if their very consciousness recognized each other on some fundamental level. The architects designed their legacy to respond to compatible minds, Nyx said softly. Not just individually worthy, but complementary. Different perspectives that, when united, create something greater than either alone. And they guided our evolution toward that compatibility, Tristan added, still coming to terms with the implications. Humans and Stellari, different paths, different strengths, but ultimately designed to find each other, she finished. Though not in the way the Shadowers believe. They see domination where the architects intended partnership. Tristan's hand moved unconsciously toward hers, then hesitated. The memory of their joined consciousness, intimate beyond anything physical, made this simpler gesture seem simultaneously redundant and profound. Nyx closed the distance, her fingers intertwining with his. The contact sent that now familiar resonance humming through him, like musical notes finding their harmonic complement. The trials at the Nexus Spire, she said, her voice taking on a deeper timbre, they will test more than our individual capabilities. They will test this connection between us, its strength, its potential. And if we fail? The tactical officer in him needed to assess all possibilities. Her eyes held his. Then the key remains locked away, and the path to the cradle stays hidden. She paused. But I don't believe we will fail, Tristan Vale. It was the first time she had used his given name, and something shifted between them at the sound of it on her lips. The formality of commander and refugee, of human and alien, seemed to dissolve into something more essential, two beings drawn together by forces older than their civilizations. The resonance key pulsed in response to their connected touch, its holographic display expanding to show more detail of the Nexus Spire, a towering structure of impossible geometry, suspended in a region of space where multiple cosmic filaments intersected. "It's beautiful," Tristan murmured. "And dangerous," Nyx added. "The spire exists at a junction of realities. The trials it contains will challenge our perception of what is real, what is possible." "Then we should be well prepared," he said with a slight smile. "Everything since finding you has challenged those perceptions." Her answering smile transformed her alien features, making her seem both more otherworldly and more familiar simultaneously. "For me as well. My people have studied architect relics for generations, yet none of our records mentioned the depth of connection possible with a compatible consciousness." Their conversation continued through the ship's night cycle, moving from the philosophical implications of the architect's design to more personal revelations. Nyx spoke of her upbringing among the scholarly faction of the Stellari, her decision to pursue architect studies despite the growing influence of the Shadowers, and her eventual discovery of the resonance key. In turn, Tristan shared his journey from idealistic alliance officer to the more pragmatic security chief of Helios Station, a position that had satisfied his need for order but, he now realized, had left a void of purpose in his life. Perhaps that void was by design, Nyx suggested. A space waiting to be filled when the moment of convergence arrived. As the hours passed, their conversation flowed with an ease that belied their brief acquaintance. The resonance between them seemed to bridge gaps of culture and biology, creating understanding where confusion might otherwise have reigned. When Juno returned to relieve him, Tristan realized with surprise that he had been awake for over 8 hours without feeling the fatigue that should have claimed him. The connection with Nyx seemed to energize him on some fundamental level. "You two look cozy," Juno observed with a knowing glint in her augmented eyes. "Discussing the secrets of the universe. Or something more personal?" "Both, perhaps," Nyx replied with that same transformative smile. "The architects didn't separate the cosmic from the personal. Neither should we." Tristan relinquished the controls to Juno, suddenly aware of a weariness that had been held at bay by the intensity of his connection with Nyx. "Wake me when we're 4 hours out from the Nexus Spire," he instructed. As he made his way to the crew quarters, Nyx accompanied him to the corridor. There, away from Juno's observant gaze, she reached up to touch his face with gentle fingers. The contact sent that now familiar current through him, but with a new dimension, an almost tender quality that resonated with emotions neither had explicitly voiced. "Rest well, Tristan Vale," she said softly. "The trials ahead will demand all that we are separately and together." He caught her hand as she lowered it, holding it against his chest where she could surely feel the acceleration of his heartbeat. "Together," he affirmed, the word carrying weight beyond its simple syllables. For a moment they stood in perfect stillness, the universe seeming to contract around them until nothing existed but this connection, this resonance that defied explanation yet felt more real than anything in Tristan's experience. Then, with a final smile that contained both promise and mystery, Nyx turned toward the observation lounge where she preferred to conduct her meditative contemplation. Tristan watched her go, aware that something fundamental had shifted within him. The structured, orderly life he had built as Helios Station's security chief seemed like a distant memory, a preliminary chapter in a story that was only now revealing its true narrative. As he settled into his bunk, the rhythmic hum of the Phantom's drive systems lulled him toward sleep. But even as consciousness faded, he felt the continued resonance of Nyx's presence in his mind, a harmonic companion note to his own awareness that persisted even in dreams. The Nexus Spire materialized before them as the Phantom dropped out of phase shift, its impossible architecture defying conventional physics. Unlike the crystalline elegance of the first archive, the spire possessed a stark, almost austere beauty, a structure of gleaming metallic surfaces and dark energy fields that twisted in upon themselves in patterns that hurt the eye to follow. "That can't exist," Leora whispered, staring at the main view screen. "The structural integrity calculations alone." "The architects didn't confine themselves to three-dimensional constraints," Nyx explained from her position beside Tristan. "The spire exists simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, anchored at their intersection point." Juno's augmented eyes cycled rapidly through scanning frequencies. "The energy readings are off the charts. And there's something else, quantum disturbances throughout the region, like reality itself is thin here." The resonance key floated from its housing, pulsing with increasing intensity as they approached. Its projected holographic display shifted to show entry points around the spire's base, apertures that opened and closed in complex rhythmic patterns. The trials of ascension, Nyx said, her voice taking on a formal quality. 3 challenges that test the worthy: the trial of perception, the trial of unity, and the trial of transformation. No pressure, Juno muttered, guiding the ship toward the indicated entry point. Just reality-bending tests set by a hyper-advanced civilization to determine if we're worthy of their cosmic inheritance. Typical Tuesday. Despite her flippant tone, her hands were steady on the controls as she navigated the Phantom through the shifting apertures, following the key's guidance with precision born of years handling experimental craft. The ship's systems hummed in harmony with the key, their architect-derived technology recognizing kindred principles. As they penetrated the outer layers of the spire, the view screen showed a docking area unlike anything in human or stellari design, a space that seemed to reconfigure itself around them, adjusting to the Phantom's dimensions with fluid grace. "It's scanning us," Juno reported as energy fields swept through the ship. "Not just the vessel, us, specifically. The trials are calibrated to the participants," Nyx confirmed. "No 2 ascensions follow exactly the same path." The ship settled into a cradle of energy that held it more securely than any physical docking clamp. Systems powered down automatically, leaving only life support and basic functions operational. "I guess we're expected," Tristan observed, checking his sidearm more out of habit than any expectation it would prove useful against architect technology. "The archive notified the spire of our coming," Nyx agreed. "The trials await, but the path remains ours to walk." Leora checked her medical scanner, frowning at the readings. "Your neural patterns are still showing unusual synchronization," she told Tristan and Nyx. "And there's something else, quantum entanglement at the cellular level. It's as if your biological systems are harmonizing." "The resonance grows stronger as we approach the cradle," Nyx said, exchanging a glance with Tristan that contained volumes of unspoken understanding. "The trials will accelerate the process." "Is it dangerous?" Tristan asked the doctor directly. Leora sighed. "I honestly don't know. We're in uncharted territory, medically speaking. The changes appear beneficial if unusual, accelerated healing, enhanced neural efficiency. But the long-term effects..." She shrugged helplessly. "We proceed regardless," Nyx said with quiet certainty. "The path is set before us." The key floated toward the airlock, its eagerness almost palpable. As before, the ship's systems responded automatically, cycling the chamber without requiring command input. "I should stay with the ship," Juno decided, "in case our shadow of friends make an appearance." "I'm coming with you," Leora told the others firmly. "These changes to your physiology need monitoring, especially if the trials accelerate them further." With roles established, they prepared to disembark. The artificial gravity shifted as they stepped from the Phantom onto the spire's surface, not weaker or stronger, but somehow different, as if they were being held by conscious intent rather than physical law. The key led them from the docking area into the spire proper, floating ahead like an eager guide. The corridors they traversed seemed to shift subtly as they passed, perspectives changing in ways that created a faint sense of vertigo. Surfaces that appeared solid from one angle revealed themselves as energy fields from another, while distances expanded and contracted in defiance of Euclidean geometry. "The trial of perception begins," Nyx said softly as they entered a vast chamber whose boundaries were impossible to determine. "Trust nothing your senses report without confirmation." As if triggered by her words, the chamber transformed around them. The solid floor beneath their feet dissolved, replaced by what appeared to be an endless void filled with stars. Yet they remained standing, supported by nothing visible. "A projection?" Tristan suggested, fighting the vertigo that threatened to overwhelm him. "A different level of reality," Nyx corrected. "The trial shows us that our perception is limited by our experiences, our expectations. To proceed, we must expand beyond those limitations." The star field around them began to shift, individual points of light stretching into lines, then curves, then complex geometric patterns that moved with purpose and intelligence. The patterns converged, forming recognizable symbols, a language written in starlight. "The architect script," Nyx breathed, her expression one of wonder. "The mathematical foundation of reality itself." Tristan found that he could understand the symbols, though he had never seen them before. The knowledge flowed from his connection with Nyx, their shared consciousness providing context and meaning. "It's asking us to demonstrate understanding," he said, the certainty coming from somewhere beyond conscious thought. Not just intellectual comprehension, but embodied knowledge. Nyx nodded, taking his hand without hesitation. The resonance between them surged as their fingers intertwined, creating a harmonic pattern that aligned with the star script flowing around them. Together, they began to move in a sequence that resembled both dance and mathematical proof, steps and gestures that traced the fundamental patterns of reality as the architects understood it. The movements came naturally, guided by the resonance that flowed between them and the knowledge imparted by the archive. Leora watched in amazement as they moved in perfect synchrony, their bodies describing patterns in space that matched the flowing symbols. The air around them began to shimmer with resonant energy, the trial responding to their demonstration. The star field shifted again, collapsing into a single point of brilliant light before expanding outward in a simulation of cosmic birth. New patterns formed, more complex than before, challenging their understanding on deeper levels. Again and again, the patterns shifted, each iteration testing not just their comprehension but their ability to embody the knowledge, to demonstrate understanding through unified action. Throughout it all, Tristan and Nyx remained connected, their movements flowing from one to the other without hesitation or misstep. Finally, the star field stabilized, the patterns resolving into a pathway of light that led toward a previously unseen doorway. The trial of perception was complete. "Incredible," Leora whispered, her medical scanner forgotten in her hand. "Your neural patterns during that sequence, they were functioning as a single system, perfectly coordinated." Tristan and Nyx exchanged a glance, both aware that something profound had occurred between them. The resonance that had begun as an unexpected connection had deepened into something approaching unity, two distinct consciousnesses that could nonetheless function as one. The Nexus spire materialized before them as the Phantom dropped out of phase shift, its impossible architecture defying conventional physics. Unlike the crystalline elegance of the first archive, the spire possessed a stark, almost austere beauty, a structure of gleaming metallic surfaces and dark energy fields that twisted in upon themselves in patterns that hurt the eye to follow. "That can't exist," Leora whispered, staring at the main view screen. "The structural integrity calculations alone." "The architects didn't confine themselves to three-dimensional constraints," Nyx explained from her position beside Tristan. "The spire exists simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, anchored at their intersection point." Juno's augmented eyes cycled rapidly through scanning frequencies. "The energy readings are off the charts. And there's something else, quantum disturbances throughout the region, like reality itself is thin here." The resonance key floated from its housing, pulsing with increasing intensity as they approached. Its projected holographic display shifted to show entry points around the spire's base, apertures that opened and closed in complex rhythmic patterns. "The trials of ascension," Nyx said, her voice taking on a formal quality. "Three challenges that test the worthy: the trial of perception, the trial of unity, and the trial of transformation." "No pressure," Juno muttered, guiding the ship toward the indicated entry point. "Just reality-bending tests set by a hyper-advanced civilization to determine if we're worthy of their cosmic inheritance." Typical Tuesday. Despite her flippant tone, her hands were steady on the controls as she navigated the Phantom through the shifting apertures, following the key's guidance with precision born of years handling experimental craft. The ship's systems hummed in harmony with the key, their architect-derived technology recognizing kindred principles. As they penetrated the outer layers of the spire, the view screens showed a docking area unlike anything in human or stellari design, a space that seemed to reconfigure itself around them, adjusting to the Phantom's dimensions with fluid grace. "It's scanning us," Juno reported as energy fields swept through the ship. "Not just the vessel. Us, specifically." "The trials are calibrated to the participants," Nyx confirmed. "No two ascensions follow exactly the same path." The ship settled into a cradle of energy that held it more securely than any physical docking clamp. Systems powered down automatically, leaving only life support and basic functions operational. "I guess we're expected," Tristan observed, checking his sidearm more out of habit than any expectation it would prove useful against architect technology. "The archive notified the spire of our coming," Nyx agreed. "The trials await, but the path remains ours to walk." Leora checked her medical scanner, frowning at the readings. "Your neural patterns are still showing unusual synchronization," she told Tristan and Nyx. "And there's something else, quantum entanglement at the cellular level. It's as if your biological systems are harmonizing." The resonance grows stronger as we approach the cradle, Nyx said, exchanging a glance with Tristan that contained volumes of unspoken understanding. The trials will accelerate the process. Is it dangerous? Tristan asked the doctor directly. Leora sighed. I honestly don't know. We're in uncharted territory, medically speaking. The changes appear beneficial if unusual, accelerated healing, enhanced neural efficiency. But the long-term effects? She shrugged helplessly. We proceed regardless, Nyx said with quiet certainty. The path is set before us. The key floated toward the airlock, its eagerness almost palpable. As before, the ship's systems responded automatically, cycling the chamber without requiring command input. I should stay with the ship, Juno decided, in case our shadower friends make an appearance. I'm coming with you, Leora told the others firmly. These changes to your physiology need monitoring, especially if the trials accelerate them further. With roles established, they prepared to disembark. The artificial gravity shifted as they stepped from the Phantom onto the spire's surface, not weaker or stronger, but somehow different, as if they were being held by conscious intent rather than physical law. The key led them from the docking area into the spire proper, floating ahead like an eager guide. The corridors they traversed seemed to shift subtly as they passed, perspectives changing in ways that created a faint sense of vertigo. Surfaces that appeared solid from one angle revealed themselves as energy fields from another, while distances expanded and contracted in defiance of Euclidean geometry. The trial of perception begins, Nyx said softly as they entered a vast chamber whose boundaries were impossible to determine. Trust nothing your senses report without confirmation. As if triggered by her words, the chamber transformed around them. The solid floor beneath their feet dissolved, replaced by what appeared to be an endless void filled with stars. Yet they remained standing, supported by nothing visible. A projection? Tristan suggested, fighting the vertigo that threatened to overwhelm him. A different level of reality, Nyx corrected. The trial shows us that our perception is limited by our experiences, our expectations. To proceed, we must expand beyond those limitations. The star field around them began to shift, individual points of light stretching into lines, then curves, then complex geometric patterns that moved with purpose and intelligence. The patterns converged, forming recognizable symbols, a language written in starlight. The architect script, Nyx breathed, her expression one of wonder. The mathematical foundation of reality itself. Tristan found that he could understand the symbols, though he had never seen them before. The knowledge flowed from his connection with Nyx, their shared consciousness providing context and meaning. It's asking us to demonstrate understanding, he said, the certainty coming from somewhere beyond conscious thought. Not just intellectual comprehension, but embodied knowledge. Nyx nodded, taking his hand without hesitation. The resonance between them surged as their fingers intertwined, creating a harmonic pattern that aligned with the star script flowing around them. Together, they began to move in a sequence that resembled both dance and mathematical proof, steps and gestures that traced the fundamental patterns of reality as the architects understood it. The movements came naturally, guided by the resonance that flowed between them and the knowledge imparted by the archive. Leora watched in amazement as they moved in perfect synchrony, their bodies describing patterns in space that matched the flowing symbols. The air around them began to shimmer with resonant energy, the trial responding to their demonstration. The star field shifted again, collapsing into a single point of brilliant light before expanding outward in a simulation of cosmic birth. New patterns formed, more complex than before, challenging their understanding on deeper levels. Again and again, the patterns shifted, each iteration testing not just their comprehension but their ability to embody the knowledge, to demonstrate understanding through unified action. Throughout it all, Tristan and Nyx remained connected, their movements flowing from one to the other without hesitation or misstep. Finally, the star field stabilized, the patterns resolving into a pathway of light that led toward a previously unseen doorway. The trial of perception was complete. Incredible, Leora whispered, her medical scanner forgotten in her hand. Your neural patterns during that sequence, they were functioning as a single system, perfectly coordinated. Tristan and Nyx exchanged a glance, both aware that something profound had occurred between them. The resonance that had begun as an unexpected connection had deepened into something approaching unity, two distinct consciousnesses that could nonetheless function as one. The trial of unity awaits, Nyx said, indicating the pathway of light. Are you prepared? Tristan nodded, still processing the experience they had shared. Together, he affirmed, the word having gained new layers of meaning with each trial they faced. The pathway led them into another chamber, this one appearing initially as a perfect reflection of their reality. An exact copy of themselves stood opposite, mirroring their movements with unsettling precision. Don't be fooled, Nyx cautioned. The reflections aren't simply images. As she spoke, the reflections began to change, transforming to reveal aspects of themselves that remained hidden or suppressed. Tristan's reflection took on a harder edge, the tactical officer who calculated acceptable losses, who had sometimes prioritized mission over mercy. Nyx's showed a darker beauty, the scholar who had pursued knowledge with single-minded intensity, sometimes at the cost of connection with her own people. The trial of unity doesn't ask us to be perfect, Nyx explained, her voice steady despite the uncomfortable truths being revealed. It asks us to be whole, to acknowledge all aspects of ourselves, and still choose unity. The reflections continued to shift, showing possible futures based on choices not yet made. Tristan saw himself returning to the rigid order of Alliance command, letting the wonders he had discovered fade into memory for the comfort of the familiar. Nyx witnessed herself embracing isolation, pursuing architect knowledge alone rather than risking the vulnerability of true connection. We must accept these possibilities without being defined by them, Nyx said, reaching for Tristan's hand once more. The trial asks if we can see the whole truth of ourselves and still choose to unite. As their hands joined, the resonance between them flowed not just through their strengths but through their shadows as well, the doubts, the fears, the capacity for isolation that existed in both. Yet rather than weakening their connection, this complete acceptance deepened it, creating a resonance that encompassed the totality of who they were. The reflections responded, merging back into unified images that no longer simply mirrored them but showed them as they could be, evolved through unity, stronger through complete acceptance of both light and shadow. A new doorway appeared, this one emanating not light but a shimmering field of potential, a threshold that would require them to pass through as something different than they had entered. The trial of transformation, Nyx said softly. The final challenge. Leora stepped forward, her scanner displaying readings she clearly found disturbing. Whatever that doorway is, it's emitting quantum field effects that could fundamentally alter molecular structures. I can't predict what passing through it would do to your physiology. It will complete what has already begun, Nyx replied with calm certainty. The resonance between us has been preparing us for this moment since we first met. The resonance key floated toward the threshold, pulsing with anticipation. From within the shimmering field came a sensation of welcome, of homecoming, that called to something deep within both Tristan and Nyx. This is your choice, Commander, Leora said formally. As your physician, I must advise against stepping into an unknown field that could alter your fundamental biology. And as my friend? Tristan asked quietly. Leora's professional demeanor softened. As your friend, I recognize that you've been changing since the moment you found her. This may simply be the completion of a process already well underway. Tristan turned to Nyx, searching her cosmic eyes for any doubt or hesitation. He found none, only a serene certainty in something deeper, something that resonated with the emotions growing within his own heart. Whatever lies beyond that threshold, he said, we face it as we have faced everything since the beginning. Together, she finished, the word carrying all the power of a vow. Hand in hand, they approached the shimmering field. The resonance between them built to a crescendo as they reached the threshold, their joined consciousness expanding to encompass possibilities beyond individual experience. With a final shared glance of absolute trust, they stepped through the barrier of transformation. Light enveloped them, not the harsh glare of energy weapons or the cold brilliance of stars, but a living radiance that flowed through them like liquid truth. For a moment that stretched beyond time, they existed as pure potential, their consciousnesses fully merged yet still distinct, like two melodies weaving through a single perfect composition. Through this union, they perceived realities beyond conventional dimensions, the intricate connections between all things, the patterns that underlay existence itself. They glimpsed the architect's vision in its totality, not conquest or domination, but harmonious evolution through diversity, united in common purpose. When the light finally receded, they stood in a chamber of breathtaking beauty. a space that seemed to contain aspects of all possible realities simultaneously. At its center floated another key, similar to the first but distinct in its patterns, its resonance complementary rather than identical. But the true transformation was within them. The resonance that had begun as an unexpected connection had evolved into something unprecedented, a bond that transcended conventional understanding while preserving their individual essences. Leora stood nearby, her medical scanner recording changes she could scarcely believe. "Your DNA?" she whispered. "It's been altered at the quantum level. Not merged, not damaged, but enhanced. As if dormant potentials have been activated in both of you." Tristan felt the changes within himself, an expanded awareness, a deeper connection not just to Nyx but to reality itself. He could perceive patterns previously invisible, understand principles that would have been incomprehensible days before. Nyx's appearance had subtly changed as well, her crystalline features now emitting a soft luminescence that pulsed in harmony with her emotions. When she turned to Tristan, her cosmic eyes held a depth of feeling that transcended mere affection. "We have passed the trials," she said, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with his consciousness. "The path to the cradle is open." The second key floated toward them, joining its predecessor in a dance of complementary patterns. Together, they projected a new map, more complete than before, showing not just the path forward but the connections between all architect sites across the galaxy. As Tristan and Nyx stood contemplating the keys and their transformed bond, an alarm sounded from the communication device at Tristan's belt. "Commander," came Juno's urgent voice. "Multiple ships have entered the region. Shadow are vessels more advanced than the ones that pursued us from Helios. Their weapons are charging." Reality reasserted itself with brutal immediacy. The wonders they had discovered, the transformation they had undergone, all would be meaningless if they couldn't protect the keys from those who would misuse their power. Yet as Tristan met Nyx's gaze, he felt not fear but a profound certainty. The resonance between them had prepared them for this moment, had transformed them precisely so they could face this challenge. "We need to return to the ship," he said. Quickly. As they moved to leave the chamber, the keys floated after them, now orbiting around both Tristan and Nyx as if recognizing them as joint custodians. The trial of transformation had indeed changed everything, not just who they were individually, but what they could accomplish together. The path back to the Phantom seemed to compress, the spire's architecture responding to their enhanced perception by offering the most direct route. As they ran, Tristan felt the resonance guiding his steps, coordinating his movements with Nyx's in perfect harmony. Whatever awaited them beyond the spire, whatever challenges the Shadowers might present, they would face it not as commander and refugee, not as human and Stellari, but as something new. Two beings united by a bond the architects themselves had designed across eons of patient evolution. And in that unity lay a power the Shadowers could scarcely comprehend, a potential for transformation that extended far beyond themselves to encompass all they touched.